Welcome to Lesson 3 of Finally Python and Jupyter for true newbies. In this lesson, we're going to learn about variables. Every coding language has variables, and so since we're learning Python, we're going to learn how to create variables in Python, store values, and then retrieve values from those variables. Let's begin by thinking of a variable as a box. You could think of it as a jar or a bin or a bucket, but let's just go with box for now. In the real world, you might buy a box or find one or save one and reuse it. In the coding world, we create them out of thin air just by giving them a name. Then we can put values into them and take those values back out later. And in fact, we can reuse our variable or box over and over again for different values without changing the name. That's why it's called a variable, because what you put in and what you take back out can vary over time. Let's look at how the three steps are different in three different coding languages. We can start with a language called T-SQL. When you first create your variable, you have to use the word declare. You always have to use an @ symbol in front of the name of your variable. And you also have to tell T-SQL what type of data you plan to store in your variable. In this case, we're telling it we're going to store a number of up to 3 digits. When you want to put something in your variable, you start with the keyword set. Then you use the @ sign, state your variable name, then the equal sign, then whatever you want to store. Finally, in step 3, to get the value back out, you would use the word select, then the @ sign, and then your variable name. With Snowflake, it's a little bit easier. There's no first step. There's no declaration, and you don't have to tell Snowflake what you're planning to store in it. You just use the set keyword, you name the variable, you use an equal sign, and you put something into the variable. So you're doing step 1 and 2 all in one statement. Then when it's time to get it back, you use the word select. You have to remember to put a $ in front of the variable name, or it won't know what you're talking about. And then, of course, Python is the simplest of the three. Just like Snowflake, there's no declaration statement. You just say what you want your variable to be named, and then you fill it by using an equal sign. When it's time to get it back, there's no special symbol to put in front of the name of the variable. You just say the name, and you'll get back the value. So on this screen, we're using Python variables in different cells of a Jupyter notebook. In the first cell, you can see we create the variable name box and we set the value to 6 times 6. In the second cell, we ask them to give us back whatever is in box, whatever's in the variable box. In the third cell, we create the variable name jar and we fill it with a string, which is hey with an exclamation point. In the fourth cell, we ask for it back. In the remaining 3, we combine our variables with the print command. And so you'll be able to see what happens when you combine variables with something like a print command. And you're going to see some concatenation, which hopefully you remember from lesson 2. And then look at the last 2 cells. What do you think the difference in output will be when we put a variable into quotes? So think about what you think is going to happen and then try that out in your Jupyter notebook. Here you can just watch as I run them and you can see what the resulting output is. Notice that in the very last line, because I put the variable names in quotes, it treated them not as variables, but as something called literals, the opposite of variables. So this concludes our lesson 3 on variables.